beautiful design and engineering. She probably represents the very best of the great British people. She's got on the nose, she bears the title The Spirit of Great Britain years ago. Say, even when she first appeared at Farnborough in the early 1950s, she's as maneuverable as a fighter, despite being a large bomber capable of carrying 21,000 pounds of weaponry in the Bombay, which we shall see earlier. And of course, in the early days at the Farnborough Air Show, the great test pilot Rowley Falk did actually roll her as part of his display. But eventually they decided that wasn't quite appropriate. She could still roll these days, she's perfectly capable of it, but we're not allowed to do it by regulation. But you will see some quite steep turns during this display today. She's going to come flying past in a moment at about 300 knots, 345 miles an hour. Top speed was 640 miles an hour, not quite the speed of sound, about Mach 0.97. So the extraordinary thing is the shape that was to become this magnificent aircraft was first drawn on a scrappy piece of paper in 1946 by the same man who designed the fantastic Lancaster bomber. And the really extraordinary thing is when you picture the Lancaster bomber, which is a sort of typical Second World War shape, that there is only 11 years between these two aircraft. Lancaster first flew in 1941 and Vulcan flew in 1952. But they look as if they come from different centuries, really. Roy Chadwick was the man who designed this. He died in 1947, sad to say, in a crash, so he never saw his brilliant design fly, and nor did he see it become the first successful operational delta-winged aircraft in the world. So the RAF got its first Vulcan in 1956, and with its contemporary bombers, the Valiant and the Victor, it had been designed to carry the British nuclear deterrent during the Cold War. And indeed, this year, 2014, it's 25 years since the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of European communist regimes, which did eventually end the Cold War. Now, as Martin Withers brings XH558, that's our number, XH558, back towards us, he's going to turn. You can see the power coming on those engines, and he's going to do a spiral climb. If you've got binoculars on the aircraft at the moment, you'll see the air brake sticking out of the top of the wing and beneath the wing as well. And the undercarriage is coming down. 18 wheels of the undercarriage. He isn't going to land just yet, though. He'll descend as if he were going to land and then come past us, cleaning up, as they say in the trade, getting the undercarriage and the flaps up. Back to the history books, in the mid-60s, Vulcans had handed over their awesome responsibility of carrying the nuclear deterrent to the Royal Navy, which still has it to this day. They became instead tactical low-level conventional bombers, and instead of being bright white, anti-flash white for the nuclear role, they got this new camouflage colour. But of course, in 1982, nearly at the end of her operational career and supported by 11 Victors Vulcan 607 hit the center line of the Port Stanley runway in the Falkland Islands with one bomb and the edge with another, making the runway unusable for Argentine fast jets. It was the longest bombing raid in history. And in fact, it was about 7,700 miles round trip, which is about the same distance as from here to Bali in one hop. And it took no less than 18 air-to-air refuelings. And of course, the man in charge was the man who's flying 558 today. This was the first V2 version, first flew in 1960, so she's 54 years old this year. Now as she comes towards us, keep your eyes on the underside of the aircraft. I expect to see the bomb bay open, and you'll see how big that bomb bay is, that's set to carry those 21 1,000-pound bombs all the way to the Falkland Islands. There it is. The bomb bay, of course, the very heart of a bomber. That's what the aeroplane is all about. Everything around it is designed to carry that enormous load to the target. In fact, in the bomb bay these days are the names of people who contributed significantly to the 20 million pounds it's cost so far to get this aeroplane from her retirement from the Royal Air Force to the magnificent state she's in today. Because it may seem obvious, but she's not funded by the government. She doesn't belong to the Royal Air Force. And when the RAF retired her in 1993, she was destined for the scrap heap, or maybe a place in a museum. But two very important people, David Walton came along and bought this aircraft, which had been the RAF's display aircraft, and an awful lot of spares, and Dr. Robert Fleming, who was eventually the man who set up the Vulcan to the Sky Trust. Bomb bay doors are closing as she goes past us. As I was saying, it's cost 20 million pounds, including 2.7 million in an unprecedented heritage lottery grant. Rolls-Royce and Serco, but most of the money has come from you. And thank you so much for showing how much you really love this aeroplane. I was saying earlier, we just had some Facebook followers as to what was their favourite aeroplane at the Farnborough Air Show. Second was the Red Arrows, first was this XH558. And she'll be landing off this approach. I think Martin will probably not elect to use the braking parachute. I'm ashamed because it's a very lovely thing to see, but it's rather expensive. It costs a couple of grand every time we use it. So he'll just let the aircraft float down the runway with the nose held high in the air and the oncoming airflow slowing the aircraft down with that enormous, great, well, bigger than palm doors Delta wings. Although, interestingly, she's not quite as big as you might think. She's about the same size in length and wingspan as a small Airbus airliner, an A318. 111-foot wingspan, that's as long as an A318. 105-foot long, the Airbus has 103-foot of wingspan. So, of course, she looks entirely different because she's not a cruciform shape like most aircraft are. She has that Delta shape. And she was, of course, as I was saying, the first operational Delta wing to fly in the world. So, just coming into touchdown, see the air brakes on the top and underneath the wings there. 16 wheels down, and the braking chute has appeared. There it is. So he won't be keeping the nose up.
One of the few offerings here today from the Royal Air Force, and rather sad that we now would not be able to see the Chinook either. But moving on, something radically different. Much quieter, much more sedate, and I hope a little bit more fun.